What if I told you that in 1899, when most African chiefs surrendered to the French colonial army, one queen didn't just refuse, she fought back and won? I am Joana, and again we uncover another Africa's untold story. Her name was Sarraounia Mangou. I hope I pronounced that well. It's on the screen. Ruler of the Azania people in present-day Niger. They called her a warrior and a witch who stood her ground when even empires trembled before European guns. By the late 1800s, French colonial expansion in West Africa was moving like wildfire. You know, villages were burned, rulers were defeated, and treaties were signed under threats. Most kingdoms around Niger had either fallen or surrendered, but not Sarraouinia's kingdom. Her fortress city, Lagou, was protected not only by walls, but by warriors and belief. The people said she was trained in herbal medicine and charms, in old powers that commanded wind and fire. Some people called her a witch, and I'm going to tell you why very soon. You might have heard of Valet Shannon mission, but if you haven't heard of it, let me introduce you to them. Paul Valet and Julien Shannon. I don't know his French names. I don't know if I pronounced it well. Leaders of the infamous Valet Shannon mission. This was a colonial expedition meant to secure Niger for France, but in reality, it was actually a death march. The captain, Valet, a 32 years old son of a doctor, and the lieutenant, son of the general and future war minister Charles Shannon, were said to be impulsive, ruthless, and cruel out of cold-bloodedness, as well as for pleasure. Both of them had already proved their ruthlessness and efficiency 2 years before when they invaded Mosi Kingdom and conquered the capital, Ouagadougou. Valet and Shannon were acting as if they were competing for the most heinous atrocities award. They'd put in a strong showing, going above their baseline of raping, pillaging, to put in extra efforts to burn down entire villages to the ground and kill every inhabitant therein. They'd become so villainous that their own soldiers defected, writing back home to France how disgusting their monstrous crimes were. They seemed unstoppable. And then they met Sarraounia Mangou. Now, the big question, what do you do when you are faced with an army that has massacred everything on its path? Surrender like others had done? Survive or fight, knowing that resistance might actually mean your extinction? Sarraounia's advisors begged her to submit, to please, just let us become French. But she said no. It was like she was saying, if they want fire, they go meet fire, and she meant it. Sarraounia wasn't new to war at all. She had already repelled Tuareg raiders and Fulani jihads, each time defending her people's autonomy and belief. So when the French arrived, she thought perhaps she could reason with them now. But Valet and Shannon weren't conquerors who came to negotiate. They came to annihilate. Before we move on to the battlefield, there's something interesting about her. They say that Sarraounia had eyes color of a molten gold. They said she could hurl flame at invaders with her bare hands, that she could even summon fog to hide her troops from French army. It is said that her magical charms erased her troops' footsteps from the battlefield, and any crop that were blazed to ashes grew overnight, and she used that to feed her warriors. Magic, myth, metaphor, who can say? But what we know is this: her people believed in her completely, and that belief was all they needed to go head-to-head with the French. When French attacked Lagou, expecting an easy victory, Sarraounia's warriors fought like phantoms. From the trees, from the fog, from the unseen. The French, they started firing blindly, advancing into traps laid by people who knew the land like the back of their hand. By nightfall, the great French expedition was in disarray, and they were the ones armed with rifles and cannons, but they had to retreat. They retreated. The queen had done what no other chief had managed to do. She defeated Valet Shannon mission in open battle, fair and square. For the French, this was more than just a loss. It was a humiliation, especially Valet and Shannon. A woman leading animist villagers had stopped the entire empire's advance. By the way, an animist is a person who believes that plants, animals, rock, weather, other natural objects possess a distinct spiritual essence. Maybe I am an animist actually. I don't know. For Sarraounia, it was vindication. Her victory became the talk of the entire town. But the monster mission didn't stop. France, realizing things had gone out of hand, has gone too far, they dispatched Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Francis Club, a respected officer, to arrest Valet and Shannon. Club marched after them, horrified by their brutality. Now it is going to twist. When he finally confronted Valet, he demanded they stand down in the name of France. Valet said, la, he refused. I wasn't expecting him to agree before now with his madness. He proclaimed that he was no longer French. The thing that entire head was like, no, I'm not French again. He's now a black chief. He's going to found his own empire now. He's not French. Not long after, he ordered his own men to open fire on the French club, and they killed him. The officers' reactions were far from enthusiastic. Their mood quickly spread across the troops, and well, you can't blame them. Even his own fellow soldiers had reached their limit. On July 16, 1899, one of Valet's men secretly warned him that his own soldiers are planning to rebel. Valet got angry. Not just that because they are going to rebel, but because that soldier soldier that came to warn him told him too late. So in front of everyone, he shot that informer dead to make an example of him. Now you can imagine the shock on the face of that man before he was going to die. This Vaole needs to be checked. Someone is trying to help you and you killed him. Okay, what if he did not come and tell you, say? Vaole then gathered all his troops and gave them a furious speech, yelling at them that they must obey him no matter what. While he was shouting, he also started shooting at his own soldiers to scare them into submission. When they say the man is bloodthirsty, they weren't joking, but that backfired. The Senegalese soldiers, that's the African troop under his command. You remember in one of the episodes, I don't know if we posted it, I talked about the Askari. These are like local troops that are now in this foreign command. They fired back, killing Shannon. Vaole managed to escape into the night, running away into a nearby village, but that was the beginning of his end. The once mighty, crazy mission had collapsed under the weight of his own evil. But sadly, the damage was already done. Villages destroyed, lives were lost, and Sarraouia's city scattered by the fires of war. She'd won, yes, but at an unimaginable cost. In the quiet that followed, Sarraounia walked through the ruins of what had been Laogo. The air still smelled of gunpowder and rain. Her people buried the dead, and she must have wondered, was this victory worth the loss? But history would later answer her and say yes, because her defiance paved the way for others. The Vaule-Shannon expedition became a cautionary tale even in France. Sarraouina, the so-called witch queen, became a legend of resistance. She proved that the courage wasn't about the size or weaponry, but about conviction. And her victory, though small on the map, was enormous in meaning. According to oral history, when the French tried one last assault, Sarraouina vanished. Her palace doors blew open and a panther leaped out and disappeared into the forest. The palace was empty. Some say she transformed and walked into the spirit world. Others say she lived on in the wild, watching over her people from her shadows. Today, Sarraounia Mangou stands as one of West Africa's greatest heroines, the queen who fought the empire with intellect and incantation. Her story asks a timeless question: when power comes to destroy, what do you do? For Sarraouina, the answer was simple: you fight. I'm Joadri, and that was Africa's untold story.